welcome to your second lesson in this sample series for the Trades Coach Academy. This lesson's entitled Costing for Profit, starting out in the right direction. So what we're going to cover in this lesson today is learning a little bit about first, what are the different sort of types of money in your business. You possibly didn't realize there are different types of money, but we're going to cover that off in a small example. Secondly, just going to briefly look at the different quoting systems that typically are in existence for construction businesses. Next, we're going to take a look at the most important part of this module, and that's about incorporating an extra profit check step in your normal pricing process in order to try and gauge just a little bit more detail about what's the true kind of gross profit that this potential job that you're looking to put a quote together for is going to generate for you, and is that profit enough to kind of give you the type of return that you need in order to run a profitable business. And lastly, just briefly look at the importance of kind of keeping score as you go and not necessarily waiting until after the game is finished, or in accounting terms, until you get your reports from your accountant as to how well you've done. In a book called The E-Myth Contractor from Michael Gerber, I don't know if you've read it. If you haven't, I suggest you do. He talks about 4 different types of money in your business, and those types is revenue. It's the sales revenue coming into the business, the profitability of the business, profits, cash flow, and equity. So in a business, if you don't need to be, I guess, an accountant to study all this, but it's important that you do have an appreciation that there are different aspects of money within your business, and you do need to keep a bit of an eye on the different types of money in your business in order to get a more balanced type of return from your business and a more balanced success. If you focus too much in one area, then the danger is that perhaps you drop the ball in another. To illustrate this point of different types of money in a business, I'll just run through this quick example here. So we've got 2 businesses, business A and business B, and I'm going to introduce different aspects of money into each side of these, and I want you to decide after we enter each line as to which business do you think is best, and if you were going to buy this business, which one would you go for? So just looking at net profit to start with, business A generates a net profit of $250,000, business B generates a profit of $150,000. So which business is best? Hopefully it looks reasonably obvious that business A generating $250,000 is a better business, right? Okay, well, let's look at the investment that the owner has put into that business in order to generate that kind of net profit. So business A has an investment from the owners of $2 million, so the return on that investment, the net profit is generating is 12.5% net return. Okay, well, it's not bad. It's certainly a lot better than putting your money in the bank. Business B, on the other hand, has required an investment of only $500,000, even though it's generating less profit, but the return on investment is 30%. So, okay, which business is better now? A little bit confusing, right? Let's look now at a third aspect of money, which is cash flow. Specifically here, we're looking at an aspect of cash flow around the collection of money from debtors, and how long in the average number of days does it take for the owner to be paid for sales made. So business A takes the owner 21 days to get his money. Business B takes 84 days. So okay, now which business is better now? Now it's really confusing, right? So it, I just wanted to illustrate with you, and obviously I've chosen figures that are, quite radically different in different areas. But the point is that there are different elements of money in your business, and you do need to not get too blinded by just one. And certainly one figure you don't want to get blinded by is the revenue one, which just is the amount of money coming in the top, and ignore the profit figure at the bottom. This analogy that business is like a leaky bucket is quite true, and this applies to any business, not necessarily a construction business, but any business. Revenue gets poured in the top of the bucket, and every business has leaks in it, and um, money or profit leaks out of the business in different areas, different inefficiencies in the business, and what have you. So a lot of what I do with my clients, and a lot of what we'll do through the wider part of the Trades Coach Academy, is look at these different leaks in your business bucket, and we look to try and plug those, because it's usually better to try and plug some leaks first before you focus on, amping up your sales and marketing process to increase the amount of revenue coming in the top. Um, you know, that may help, but it's probably not going to help your profitability if the money just leaks out the business faster and faster. And I've certainly seen lots of businesses, particularly in the construction industry, that get amped up with sales and marketing, but the leaks in the bucket are too big, and it just leaks out faster and faster, and people get themselves into all sorts of trouble. I'm not a builder, but I understand building businesses. But going back to my third form woodworking class, and I guess my father told me the same thing. It's the analogy or the saying, measure twice, cut once. Hopefully you understand that principle very well. But the same applies in many aspects of business and in many aspects of life. And as far as the quoting process is concerned, I like to, take that saying and adapt a bit as far as saying figure twice, quote once. So we want to now look at adding an additional kind of step into your costing process, kind of off on the side, just as a double check. Before we do that, we'll just briefly look at the different quoting systems in your business. And you probably understand these pretty well, but we'll just whiz through them anyway, just to help set the scene. So, there are probably four basic types of quoting systems in a business, maybe more, but these are the four main ones. First one is fixed price, so is where you're guaranteeing a total cost to the client, and as long as they don't add anything extra to it, that's what it's going to cost them. So potentially that's a slightly higher risk quoting strategy for you as the business owner, but it also should be a higher profitability quoting system for you as well, because where there is extra risk, there should be extra reward. A lower risk strategy, and potentially a lower reward one, is a charge up. So rather than quoting a set price, you just agree on what perhaps your markup percentage is going to be on subcontractors and materials. You agree on a fixed hourly labour rate, and then just based on what labour and materials you use during the job, you present the bill on a regular basis as the project goes. You can look, sometimes there's a bit of a blended system between the two. You might be able to lock in major components of the building process. Likely those are going to be components that have been supplied by external subcontractors, and so you can lock those prices in. You get a quote from those, so you can pass those through with a markup to the owner, so that's locked in, and then the balance of the project, principally the construction labour is perhaps on a charge-out basis. And fourthly is just pure labour only, whereby you're only just charging for the hours of labour that is expended on the project. The subcontractors and the materials are being provided by the owner of the project. Okay, so let's turn our attention now to the pricing process and the way that typically most construction businesses tend to price their work. And again, here I've used very simple sort of figures just to illustrate the point. So in our example here, the materials price that you're charging to the client is $50,000. There are a subcontractor charged to the client for $10,000. Labour, you have figured as 1,000 hours, and you're going to be billing these out at $40 an hour. It's $40,000 worth of labour, giving a total price of $100,000. Some contracting or construction business owners stop at that point, and then that is the sale price to the client. Others perhaps add on an overall builder's margin onto the bottom of that, and so that might be, there's an extra 10% markup here on the whole project, giving an ultimate sale price of $110,000. So that's typically the way that it's done, and in particular, looking back at that labour line there, that 1,000 hours at $40 an hour, the $40 price per hour tends to be this kind of mythical, market rate for a charge out for whatever industry you happen to be in. May not bear any resemblance to what it needs to be in order to cover all the overheads of the business and build a profitable business. That's another story, and we'll deal with that one in another lesson. I guess, the question is there enough profit in this job to be worthwhile and to be able to give you a contribution to the overall profitability of your business? And that's the $64,000 question. So what I want to explain to you now is perhaps an additional kind of step that you can add in to your costing process. And this sits off onto the side of maybe you've got, you put your costings together in a spreadsheet. Okay, well, maybe you just need to put this out on the side, might be on a bit of paper, might be on the spreadsheet as well. But the process is to look at extract out the various bits of margin that each line of the cost is generating for you. So in this instance here, the materials line, you're charging $50,000. The price from your suppliers was $45,000. So there's $5,000 worth of margin that you've got built into the project there. So extract that out, put it on the side. $5,000 margin on materials. Subcontractors, again, you've been quoted $9,000 by the subcontractors for doing their bits. That gives you $1,000 margin from them, right? Put that out onto the side. Labour, you've figured that you're making hopefully $10 an hour on each guy, so you've got 1,000 hours. $10 per man hour is giving you $10,000 margin. Again, that can be a bit of a nebulous figure, and we will deal with that in a later module in the Academy course about figuring out what should be your labour charge out rate. So, and in this particular instance, we've only just looked at the very top of that original costing process. This particular owner here hasn't charged an overall margin on top of everything else. We've just stopped there. So $100,000 is the sale price to the client on this project. So that's extracting out the bits of margin from the various sort of lines is a total of $16,000 gross profit on this job. And that's a 16% gross margin figure. Talking about percentages, it's easy. It's good to compare one. It's easier to compare one project to another. If you just deal with the raw dollars, it's a little bit harder to compare. So the question is that 16% the right figure for your business? Is that enough? And that's a really, really good question. It's a very, very powerful question. And unfortunately, not enough owners of construction businesses ask that question or ask it enough. Because at the end of the day, you need to know, can I run my business with hitting a 16% gross margin on this project? And as long as I can repeat that on all the other projects on average, will that generate sufficient profit for me to cover all the overheads of my business, which are all the things that cost you to get out of bed in the morning, run vehicles, run phones, insurances, subscriptions, all that kind of stuff, your accounting fees, generate a reasonable, fair owner salary for you as well, plus leave some net profit left over in the business to fund growth and maybe repay debt or what have you. Is that figure enough? Maybe it's not. Maybe it is. Maybe it's even too high. Possibly you can even be a bit lower. Who knows? But you need to ask that question, and you need to be able to know whether that is the magic figure or not. And you really need that figure is generated through a budgeting kind of process, and in part of the Academy main course, we deal with budgeting and putting together that figure in order to determine what is that magic gross profit figure that you need for your business. And it's important to keep score as you go. It's no use waiting for your accountant to produce your annual reports and tell you what happened last year and find out that, oh, actually, gee whiz, those projects we did last year, bit of a shame, we didn't make kind of enough on them. You can't, the game's over then, you can't make those changes. The analogy here is, I guess, as the game goes, you're gathering those statistics as you go through the game, and on a rugby game, there'll be, tackles made, percentage of territory, those things that perhaps are analysed a little bit at half time. So when you have a break, you can make some adjustments, go out in the second half, and smash it. So that leads on to another topic, which again we'll cover later on, about the back costing process, about keeping a track of project profitability as the project goes. So if you start to run off the rails, you can make those changes before it's too late. As with all of these modules, it's important that you take some action. There's nothing really to download for this module, but again, what I strongly suggest you do is go back and check some of your previous projects. Get those figures out and try and extract out from those the various bits of margin that are hidden perhaps within the different components of the costing process. Add those up, divide that total figure into the selling price, and come up with that gross profit percentage figure. What does that give you? And does that give you any clue as to what your business needs to be aiming at on every project to make your business a success? So I hope you found that interesting, if a little bit complex. Any questions, my email address is there on the screen. So drop me a line, and if you want any clarification, I'm more than happy to do so. Again, as mentioned in the previous module, if you want to jump ahead and jump onto the course, fantastic. There's a link there through to the information page. Next lesson, we're going to learn a little about delegation and about the ways to get some of the busyness off your plate onto somebody else's, and the correct process for doing that. And it's a really important function or or skill to learn in your business to be able to delegate properly for you to be able to grow your business that's bigger than you. So that hopefully will be really good for you to look forward to. Thank you very much, and look forward to seeing you in the next module.